Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're out at the range, and pardon the road noise. When we get some vegetation, when we get spring actually springing, we shouldn't have so much road noise at this range. You've seen us shoot here before, but today we want to talk about America's Mausers. And that's right, the United States did at one time use Mauser rifles. As a matter of fact, during World War I, a lot of countries that were fighting each other were all using Mauser-based rifles, including the United States. And that's what today's video is about America's Mauser, the 1903 Springfield. This rifle is a 1903 A4. This is the sniper variant. This is a Gibbs reproduction. It's a very faithful reproduction, right down to the barrel and how it's manufactured, with the exception it has a date of 2011. That's because I believe it has a Criterion barrel on it, but it's correct to have the front sight missing and still have the marks for the front sight on the barrel. This is a very, very accurate reproduction, including the scope that's on it, which is manufactured by Hilux. So we're going to start off shooting the sniper rifle. Then we're going to dig into a little bit of the history of the 1903 Springfield and how it served U.S. military forces. Right now I have the 03 A4, the A4 being the sniper variant, loaded up with some American Eagle. This is a 150 grain 30-06, and that's the caliber that the 1903 was chambered in, except for the very early versions, which wound up not being adopted. And this is just some basic American Eagle. We're at 100 yards away from a man-size steel challenge target. And I haven't shot this gun in years, guys. There's a video dedicated to this gun way back in the library. You can go dig up. And I don't think I've shot it since that video. So I'm getting reacquainted with this old girl. Let's take a pop shot at this man-size target downrange and see if she's still zeroed. Oh yeah. Such a great rifle. Make sure I picked up around there. And I have my magazine off. Let's go ahead and turn the magazine on. And there you go. And we'll explain that feature a little bit later. She's grouping nice. And we'll just put one in the noggin. And I believe that's my last shot. So, as you can see, this old girl works really, really well. What a fun rifle to shoot. Yeah, now let's break out the other 1903 variants and talk a little bit about the history of America's Mauser. Let's talk about the history of the United States using metallic cartridge rifles and repeating rifles. So, the first metallic cartridge rifle that the U.S. Army really adopted was the trapdoor Springfield of 1873. After the trapdoor Springfield came along, the U.S. Army started looking for a different rifle, started looking for a bolt-action rifle. And the rifle they wound up adopting is a rifle you've seen here before on the channel, which is the Craig Jorgensen rifle, which shoots a 30-40 Craig cartridge. Now, this rifle is probably one of the shortest-lived U.S. military service rifles ever. It's not that it's a bad rifle. It has a very smooth action, has a unique way of loading, but it has a single locking lug, and it wasn't really meant for super high pressure rounds. And so they saw that as a shortcoming of the rifle, that and the fact that you couldn't load it via stripper clip, had to be loaded by single rounds through the side door here. Go watch my Craig Jorgensen video for more information about this rifle. But the Craig Jorgensen was so popular amongst civilian shooters like myself. This is just some Remington ammo, by the way. I'm just throwing in the gun. Again, you've seen us use this here on the channel before. Most of this ammo, including this Remington, comes from our friends over at Freedom Munitions. They donate ammo to the channel. We do have a discount code down below for 6% off if you want to use that. So the Craig loads through this little door on the side. Magazine springs right there, and it's a very effective rifle. It served well. But again, it was the United States' first attempt at adopting a bolt-action rifle. And it just wasn't very well received. And that's when we get into the 1903 Springfield. But let's fire off a few rounds out of this old Craig, which is actually quite a fun rifle to shoot. I love this old girl. Very smooth action. I love shooting this old rifle. This Krag is amazing. And there you go, guys. Smooth action, neat rifle, but wasn't quite what the U.S. military was looking for. They wanted a more modern rifle, and that's where the Mauser comes in. So the story goes, after the Spanish-American War, the U.S. military brought back a number of Spanish Mausers and took a look at the design. And they came to the conclusion that the Mauser was probably the best bolt-action rifle on the market. And that's when the U.S. Army decided to explore a Mauser action. Springfield Armory started working on design, came up with what we now know as the 1903 Springfield, with some slight design changes to the firing pin and other areas. But in essence, the 1903 Springfield is a Mauser action. And so when we went into World War I, we were using Mausers. The Germans were using Mausers. Lots of people were using Mausers. And Mauser was getting rich, just like Maxim did with the machine guns of World War I. He's selling them to all belligerent nations. Everybody's using their weapons. And so America wound up using a Mauser against the country that had developed the Mauser in the first place. Weird how things play out in history. So anyway, this is an early type, this is an okay example of a original 1903 Springfield. Now you'll notice some design differences. I'm not going to get into all the nuances of all the different variations of the gun, but this one is a Rock Island Arsenal manufactured rifle. Has a straight stock on it. Some of them will have a slight wrist stock style to them. They went through a number of different iterations, and I'm not going to get into the sub-iterations or subsections of all the different design iterations. We're just going to talk about basically the three major differences: the 1903 and 1903A3, and then the 1903A4, which we opened the video up with, which is the sniper variation. So the early rifles had the rear sight forward. You could pop them up, and you could get to be very optimistic about how far out you could shoot these things. So shooting 1,000 yards with iron sights with as fine of a sight as this rifle has would again be very optimistic. For standard use, you just have the sight folded forward, you have a V-notch here, and in the front you have a very fine blade. That blade makes for a really, really nice sight picture in good light conditions. In low light, good luck seeing these sights. The US version has a downturned bolt. You'll see some Mausers that have straight bolts on them. The US opted for the downturned version. We have a striker assembly here, just like a standard Mauser. You have your safety mechanism there. And this is your striker, which you can ease forward by pulling the trigger. And then on this side of the rifle, we have a magazine cutoff. This was a real popular thing around the turn of the century. So basically the troops would use their weapons single fire until they were given the order to fire from the magazine. This rifle has an internal 5-round magazine and feeds from a stripper clip. So right now I have the magazine off. It's clearly marked off. That's what I did with my sniper rifle at the opening of the video. I had the magazine off. I'm like, why isn't it picking up and around? I'm like, oh yeah, because it says off. So I flipped it to on. These rifles feed from a 5-round stripper clip. To load the rifle, you would just simply pull the bolt to the rear. I'm going to turn the magazine on. Pull the bolt to the rear, and by doing that, really all it does is allow the bolt to come a little further back. Take your 5-round stripper clip, put it in the stripper clip guide, and then just simply push the rounds into the magazine. And then you take your stripper clip and discard it. Now the weapon's loaded, push the bolt home, picks up around, and now I can flip this off if I want to, and I can fire that first shot. I don't think the sights are on this rifle. And now it'll eject that spent case, but notice it's not picking up another one. I can throw a single round in, close it, and fire a single round. Now when I'm given the order to fire from the magazine, I can flip it to the on position. It's clearly marked on. And now the gun will fire from its magazine. I see it just a little bit high, so I'm going to aim low. There we go. It's nice when you're at 100 yards, you can see where the bullet's at, so you can adjust your Kentucky windage. Very smooth action, and it's capable of handling much higher pressures than the Krag Jorgensen that it replaced. It's a very simple rifle to maintain, and overall the ergonomics are really good, has really good target sights. Combat sights, I mean, this was normal for the era, right around the turn of the century. Like I said, in low light, good luck. But a lot of troops wanted a more precise sight picture. And that is one of the next evolutionary steps of the 1903, major evolutionary steps of the 1903 Springfield. The A3 that moves the sight to the rear of the receiver and gives you an aperture sight versus an open blade V-notch sight that was in common use. So let's take a look at the 1903 A3 rifle. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but these rifles that I'm shooting this afternoon, I picked up from the guys over at J&G Sales. You may not know this, but J&G Sales sells a lot of milsurp rifles, handguns, and so forth. But they have a whole section I stumbled upon, and just by happenstance, I was just going through looking for milsurps as I normally do, and I discovered they had a whole bunch of 1903 Springfields in all different flavors. And they're just one-offs, but a whole bunch of different ones. And so I picked up two of the rifles. I picked up one of the 1903 A3s with the rear sight that we're going to talk about here in a minute. I picked up a standard, that Smith Corona 1903, and I just wanted them as shooters. And they're really decent rifles. And as a matter of fact, J&G Sales, after I picked these rifles up, I've had these rifles for a while now. I just haven't done a video with them. Matter of fact, I think, at least for one of these rifles, it's the first time I've ever shot it. But I was talking to the guys over at J&G Sales, and they're offering a discount code for a short time, which I'll put down below. So if you watch this video 5 years from now, the code's probably not going to work. But for a short time, they're going to give you a discount on some of their surplus 1903s they have in stock. So I highly recommend going over to their website. YouTube will not allow me to link to their website, but it's just jngsales.com, j&gsales.com. Just Google it, you'll find their website. Check out some of their used rifles, and that's where you can pick up really fun shooters like this. So this rifle, the other was a Smith Corona. Actually, this is Smith Corona. The other one's a Rock Island Arsenal. So this is a Smith Corona rifle. A number of companies manufactured these rifles for the First World War effort. Springfield Armory simply couldn't meet up with demand, and that's not uncommon. That's why we have so many different manufacturers of M1 Garands from the Second World War. So a lot of companies tooled up to manufacture these rifles for the war effort. And this one is a Smith Corona. Now, the major difference you're going to see between the 03 that I just started off with, well, didn't start off with, I just shot previously, is that you no longer have the rear sight forward of the receiver. Now we have a peep sight back here in the rear with easy adjustments for elevation. It just slides with finger pressure. All right? And now we have the ability also to make adjustments to the windage with the windage knob. So this rifle is definitely improved. The sight picture on this rifle is infinitely better than the sight picture on the original 1903, and it also gives you a longer sight radius by a good 6 inches or maybe even 7 inches. So you have definitely an improved sight radius. Sight radius translates into potentially better accuracy depending on the capabilities of the shooter. A lot of folks think a longer barrel means better accuracy, and that's not the case. Generally, that's not the case. When you have a longer barrel with iron sights, you have a longer sight radius, and that's what gives you your increased accuracy. So by moving the sight back here, we got, the Army dude or whoever's using the rifle, they can make adjustments to get the rifle zeroed for themselves very easily. And then when they wanted to go out to different ranges, they just simply apply finger pressure and adjust for range on that rear peep aperture. Have a nice heavy steel sheet metal protective wing protecting that rear sight, which otherwise would be quite fragile. We still don't have a hood on the front sight here, but we still have that really fine blade, which coupled with the aperture rear sight makes for a very, very shootable rifle. One other thing that's common amongst all the variations of the 1903 is how it field strips. Let me show you how that works. So right now, the bolt locks to the rear when you go to feed. All right, now I have the magazine currently in the off position, and then you have the on position. Well, there's a half-mass detent. There's a little detent that holds this little lever. If you put it the half-mass right there, the bolt just pulls right out of the gun. That's how easy it is to service the 1903 Springfield. So wipe everything down, put it back together, either put the magazine on or off, and the bolt no longer pulls free of the receiver. Just like its predecessor, it uses a 5-round stripper clip. Loads very easily, and I have the magazine in the on position. Now the sight picture, as I said on this guy's, is a lot better. I enjoy shooting the 03 A3s much more than I enjoy shooting the 03s, simply because my old man eyes, which is why I'm not wearing eye protection, guys never do that, it really makes it easy for me to see the target and to shoot. Now these old girls have a pretty good recoil. You'll notice this rifle jumps pretty good. The 30-06 is a very potent cartridge. The 308 Winchester is basically a slightly shortened version of the 30-06. So in a straight bolt action that's really relatively light, it's got a little bit of recoil. I'm not supporting it. I'm just letting it set in my shoulder. I'm letting the bag hold the rifle for me. And you can see how that thing recoils. But the action on this thing is buttery smooth. It's just a beautiful rifle to shoot. You don't need a recoil pad. It's not hurting when it recoils. It's actually just a nice little push in the shoulder. And there you guys go. So extremely reliable, very well made rifles, and a heck of a lot of fun to shoot. Now you'll notice this one also has a straight stock on it. And some of them will have cartouches. So this is an original stock. You can see the Armory cartouches, and you can see the cartouche, the P right behind the trigger guard. So this rifle's really in a lot better shape than the 1903 I showed you at the opening of the video. Has a nice good stock on it, has the cartouches on it, and the finish is very nice on it, all original. So this is a decent example of a 1903. The only real problems you might have, I mean, in terms of cosmetic appearances, is this rifle's definitely been used. You can see some dings on the rear sight, protective ears, but that gives the rifle character. I love shooting these old war horses. They're just entirely too much fun, and shooting these things at distance with their very fine front sight and the aperture, me hitting man-sized targets at 500-600 yards, iron sights on a sunny afternoon, is exceptionally easy. They're very accurate, and the sights are well attuned to being able to take those long shots out to 500-600 yards on a man-sized target without much effort. So obviously, loading the rifle via stripper clip would be the fastest way to do it in a combat situation to get it out and ready. But let me show you that once I finish off these 5 rounds, I can easily transition over to single feed. All right, so now I fired all 5 rounds. I don't have to change the magazine setting. I can leave it in the on position and push around down into the magazine to use it that way. Dang it. I can push around down into it like that if I want to and feed, or I can just simply turn the magazine off using the lever, and that makes it so I don't have to push it down into the magazine. It'll easily line up with the chamber. So now if I just throw a round in there, I have the magazine turned off. All I gotta do is just get it into the chamber area and the gun will easily feed it. Just throw it, just get it where you guys can see it. Just throw it in there, just get it anywhere in there, and the gun will feed. And if I want to go back to magazine fed, flip the switch to on, pull the bolt to the rear, put the stripper clip in there, simply push down. There you go. Just banging away at that steel target. This thing, even with its older sights, just a real pleasure to shoot, either from the magazine or single loading. The sights in the 1903 Springfield were very intricate, and for a while there, the U.S. military was really into these complex sighting systems. Now, if you take a look at the 03s, you'll notice that you have the ladder sight, which you can run this V-notch all the way up, so you can do volley fire out to a couple thousand yards. And then if you fold it forward, this is more of your combat sight. If you look right here, you're going to see little tick marks and then zeros on either side. That's so you can make windage adjustments using this large knob right here. As I turn this knob, if you watch right where my thumb is, you'll see how the rear sight's shifting left and right. So you can make adjustments to windage. I want to put it back to 0 because it's actually pretty much spot on. But you'll notice when I was shooting the rifle earlier, this one's the one that shot a little bit low. There's a V-notch in the ladder that you can use when it's folded forward, but there's also a V-notch here in this little triangle shape that I can use. And when I use that particular rear V, this rifle shoots pretty much spot on. Let's go ahead and charge the rifle. These stripper clips are knockoffs, and they're not very good knockoffs, and they kind of suck. All right, so let's go ahead and load our rifle up. We have the magazine feed on. We're still standing at 100 yards. And voila, we have connection. I'm not holding under anymore. One thing's kind of funny, the sling swivel on this one, the clasp has lost its springiness and it just kind of falls off the rear sling swivel. And our last round. Woo, look at our sling. I'm just going to take that thing off. What's funny, while it's swinging, it's actually moving my sight. But I overcame. So it's really interesting how intricate the 1903 sights really were, but it offers a simply beautiful sight picture even with the old style sights. We walked back to the 300-yard line, and you'll see here in a second, we're about 200 yards from Peaches, and we're 300 yards from the steel challenge target down there that's a man size. Now I'm just going to use Kentucky windage. I'm not going to dial any elevation into my replica scope here. But you'll notice one thing about the A4 sniper rifle that's different from the other versions of the gun, aside from not having a front or rear iron sight. The scope sets directly over the action, thereby blocking the ability to use a stripper clip to load the gun. So you can actually load the magazines on these rifles. You just turn your magazine on, pull your bolt to the rear, and you can actually single load these rifles without the need of using a stripper clip. So we'll put a couple rounds in here really quick and use some Kentucky windage and see if we can hit Mr. Challenge target at 300 yards. Yep, I don't know if you guys are gonna hear that on the microphone, but that connected. So basically, my magazine's giving me fits. Basically, I'm holding right on his head and I'm hitting him in the chest. I don't know if you can hear that or not. It takes a little while for the sound to get back to us, so we hear boom, dong. I love shooting at range with these old war horses. Again, 3 for 3. So, yeah, very, very effective rifle. These sniper rifles continued on in service for quite some time. As a matter of fact, I think the 1903's production continued throughout World War II. Even though we had M1 Garands in the field, we couldn't produce those in large enough volume. So even Marines were still carrying 1903 Springfields in the Pacific throughout the war. So the rifles remained in service for quite some time, and a lot of them after the war wound up being sporterized and bastardized to the point where it makes me personally sick, thereby driving up. So many of them were sporterized and turned into deer rifles because they were sold for $20 or less after the war. They were just chopped up and sporterized and basically butchered. And that's why the collector's value has gone up so much, because I'm looking for a rifle that hasn't been sporterized. All right, got some American Eagle here. Load up 5 more rounds and close out this video beating up on Mr. Challenge target. Guys, thank you for 10 years of watching the channel. It's greatly appreciated. We hope we have another 10 years going forward. You never know with YouTube policies, which are constantly shifting, not necessarily in a favorable direction for gun channels. Another way you can support us here at the Military Arms Channel is to swing by and check us out over at Copper Custom. That's coppercustom.com, which is our online store. Also, guys, be sure to swing by and check out full30.com. It's where freedom rings. Most of the Top Gun content creators can be found over there, and Full30 is opening its doors up pending the new YouTube policy changes that may or may not cause a purge of gun channels. Let's hope it doesn't. But if it does, Full 30 is there. Please swing by and check it out. All right, guys, we'll talk to you soon. Five for five, standing in 100. Such an easily shot rifle. Beautiful piece of American history. Thanks for watching, guys.